are shooting the first ever found footage horror movie in 3D.
What?
Found Footage 3D is directed by Steven DeGennaro. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It stars Carter Roy, Elena von Stroheim, Tom Saporito, Chris O'Brien, Scott Allen Perry, Jessica Perrin. And it tells the story of a group of filmmakers who go out to a remote cabin in the middle of nowhere, Texas, in order to shoot the first ever found footage horror film in 3D. Weird shit starts happening to parallel the story of the movie they're making. This is an interesting film. With a title like Found Footage 3D, you'd expect that it would be, you know, complete fucking bullshit. And in a way, it is, but not in the way you're thinking. This is a meta film. This is a very self-aware film. And this is a very paradoxical film in a way. There's no reason a movie like this should work at all. But because of this film's deliberate attempts at camp and this film's deliberate self-awareness, it kind of does. This is very much what it advertises itself to be, in that it's Scream meets the Blair Witch Project. This movie has a very distinct awareness of what all the tropes and cliches are in found footage films. It understands why these things are cheap. It understands why found footage films oftentimes don't work. And it very often pokes fun at the fact that they're really stupid and cheap, and mainstream horror audiences will fucking eat them up for some reason.
Why people waste their fucking money on this vomit-inducing amateur hour bullshit is fucking beyond me.
That for me is its biggest plus, is that it knows what it wants to be. It's very self-aware. And it's aware of the cliches and the tropes, and it subverts a lot of them in ways that you really don't expect it to, and I applaud it for that. Namely, in the acting. The acting in this film is very good. It's, like, shockingly good. Again, for a film called Found Footage 3D, you probably don't expect that, but there was not really a single character in this film who I found to be a weak link. All of them were fairly good actors. They all felt very real, and that is something that was very surprising to me. It knows that it's stupid to have people not stop filming regardless of all the crazy shit that's happening to them. And in a film like this, it's aware how dumb that trope is, and it actually kind of gives a somewhat valid excuse for why they're still recording. It's a thin one, but it still works in the context of the film. I do applaud the writing in this film. I think it's really clever a lot of the time. I think it's really funny. I think the characters are really well fleshed out and developed. The relationship between the two lead actors, whose off-screen relationship ends up bleeding into their on-screen relationship, I think that works really well in terms of the film's drama. I think it really adds a certain level of tension and believability, especially considering they're a separated couple forced to act as a married couple, and that animosity and that tension bleeds into the film they're making, and it delivers for some really good sad scenes. It delivers for some really good dramatic scenes and some really good, like, just overall intense scenes, and I like that a lot. These characters often, with the exception of one or two, are fairly likable, and they're easy to get attached to, and I think that is ultimately this movie's biggest strong point, is its characters. There's a very hilarious moment involving Scott Weinberg of FearNet, which I laughed out loud at. I thought that was fucking hysterical. He's playing himself, and something happens, and I burst out laughing. But that brings me to the biggest negative on the part of this film, which is ultimately that when you are self-aware and you're acknowledging certain tropes as being trite and cliche and stupid, but then proceeding to go ahead with those tropes anyway, at the end of the day, you're really only pointing out the stupidity of your own film. When you're saying, yeah, it's dumb for a character to be running through the woods filming with a camera, but then you have a character running through the woods filming with a camera, all you're doing is pointing out that your own movie is weak on that front. I was never quite scared by this movie, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, this movie is ultimately more of a comedy than it is a horror film, but when it comes down to it, there are a lot of just false jump scares and bad CGI, which they acknowledge is going to be bad CGI when they're talking about the creature in the film they're making, and then when that creature bleeds into reality, it's done with bad CGI. things like that, for me, step over the line in terms of self-awareness, and then it stops being self-aware and it just starts feeling like they're making excuses for their shortcomings. At the end of the day, I mean, I don't really know what to say about this movie. It's a mixed bag, but I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I did have fun with it. It's a fun movie. It's got flaws, but it does things right, and I feel it does things right where it counts, especially in terms of the characters, in terms of the story, in terms of the overall self-awareness of the film, where, like I said, it does go a little too far at times, but more often than not, it is clever, it is funny, and I did enjoy it, not as much as I'd hoped I would enjoy it. Overall, I'm going to say that Found Footage 3D is fun for fans of campy, self-aware horror, and I think that if you think the found footage subgenre is silly and cliche, you'll probably get a kick out of this movie because it does a lot of shitting on that subgenre, and I got a kick out of that. I got a kick out of the fact that it doesn't take itself too seriously. It was also, having just gotten off a film set myself, it was very funny to see characters going through that sort of just intense on-set stress, because I understand what it's like now, so it was easier for me to get to relate to these characters as well. Overall, I can't say this was a bad movie. I did enjoy watching it. I would say it's worth a watch. I don't know if I would ever watch it again, but it's a fun time. You should watch it. It's clever and fun in all the ways that count, and that's really what matters. Give it a watch. It's streaming right now on Shudder. If you have it, check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and you can click down there and like and comment and subscribe, and I'll be back soon. Happy December.